Hello, hello, my generational change makers. Today, we are discussing the number one thing that I hear from my clients when they come to me for coaching, and that is the belief that they are bad with money. What if this thing that you're treating like a character flaw is actually not a personality flaw at all? What if it never was? And today, we're going to talk all about the skill of being good with money. But first, generational change makers, what do you guys think about that? I have been playing around with what I want to call my community, and I'm leaning towards the generational change makers. Most of my clients, most of the women who come to me because they are the first in their family to do this thing. They're the first in their family usually to work the corporate job, to go to college, to get the degree, to earn at this level. And there is something that happens when you become the first. You are the one that's paving the way. You are changing things for, if you have children, your next generation, your cousins, the generations to come after you. So I'm thinking about calling us the generational change makers. Let me know what you think. I'm not married to it. If you guys hate it, we can talk about it. But let's jump right in. So today, we're talking about the skill of being good with money. So many of us, generational change makers, believe that we're just not good with money. You're earning the most you've ever earned. You're likely the first person in your family who is doing it at this level, and yet you feel like you're doing something wrong. You feel like everybody else has something figured out that you haven't quite figured out just yet. And so you're saying things to yourself like, I'm not good with money. My money is a mess. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm behind. And these things make you feel bad about yourself. You're likely the first person in your circle who is earning at this level, the first to go to college, the first to be in corporate or to earn at this level in corporate, the first with a degree, the first to invest. There's so many firsts that as women of color that we experience. And sometimes we can get in our own heads about how we are the first in this space. It can be isolating and we can get in our own heads about it. And then we start to feel like we don't have the right to complain. And we don't have anyone that we can really be honest with about our financial situation. We have these thoughts in isolation. And because we have these thoughts in isolation, that thought, I'm not good with money, I don't know what I'm doing with my money, plays over and over again in our heads. And when that happens, it starts to build up, it likely can start to build up shame. And shame is a completely useless emotion. Shame shields you from results. It shields you from help. It shields you from seeking help. It shields you from talking back to that negative thought. So you say these things to yourself and they start to feel like a personality trait. This isn't a character flaw, it's an infrastructure issue. Nobody is born with this skill. They learn it. And it's based on what they've been exposed to. And so when you allow yourself to get in this shame spiral about not being good with money or my money being a mess, then you shield yourself from solutions. You've got the income, you've got the degree, but you don't have the framework. And so your money gets managed by vibes and willpower. The thing about willpower is it works until it doesn't. It takes one bad month, one emotional day, one stressful month in order for willpower to go completely out the window. And so then when that happens, you tell yourself, I'll figure it out later. Your brain takes that breakdown and misinterprets it into you being bad with money, into a character flaw, into a personality trait. And when you believe I'm bad with money, you start to look for evidence of that in your life. When you have this belief that I'm bad with money and you have repeated that belief to yourself over and over again, it becomes a character flaw. It becomes a part of your personality and your brain starts to see it as such. And then your brain starts to look for the evidence in your life that proves what it already believes to be true. It's confirmation bias. So your brain sees the overspend on your eating out expense as, yep, see, told you we weren't good with money. Your brain sees when you open the Fidelity account and it tells you that you are behind for your retirement planning as confirmation that you're bad with money, that you are behind. And so instead of what is just a skill that you haven't developed, it starts to become a part of your personality. It starts to become a character flaw and something that you believe. Discipline is a bad system. pretending to be motivation. You're not lacking willpower, but rather you're asking willpower to do the job that a system should do. And listen, I've made my fair share of bad financial mistakes. If you are subscribed to my Substack, you read about the used car that I bought at 28% APR in my late 20s. I used to carry so much shame about that decision. I would beat around the bush anytime that conversation came up. I felt like that decision for such a long time meant that I was bad with money. It meant that I had made a huge mistake that I could not recover from. And I spent so much time in that shame spiral about that decision. When the reality is, I made the best decision that was available to me at the time. And I won't go into all the details about that. You can read it over on my Substack if you want to know like what in the world possessed me to purchase a car at 28% APR. But I used to carry so much shame about this decision for a long time. I allowed this decision to dictate that I was bad with money. The shame didn't move the needle. It wasn't until I got past the shame that I was willing to speak these numbers out loud that I could look for solutions, that I could find people who could help me. And that's when I discovered the snowball method. And that's when I figured out how to pay that car off. I ultimately ended up paying it off 2 years early. Still cost me a whole lot more than it should have. However, once I got out of the shame spiral, then I could find solutions. I have a client who avoided her bank account entirely. She never, ever looked at it. And there were so many leaks in her budget, but the shame was shielding her from finding a solution. The shift wasn't tactical. It was an identity level shift that we had to make. She went from avoiding her money to trusting herself with it. Every paycheck has a plan before it arrives because you decide once, and then you're not relying on willpower every single week trying to force yourself to make the right decisions. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. I can already hear your brain. Saprita, I know what to do, but I just don't do it. So discipline is in fact my problem. I'm still going to tell you that discipline isn't your problem. That's the whole point of this episode. If knowing was enough, then you'd already be doing it, right? The gap isn't in the knowing, it's in the infrastructure, not the information. And as women of color, particularly Black women, I think we immediately think that knowledge is the answer to our problems, right? Because we have been told since we were children that if we go to school, we get the education. Education is the way out. And for so many of us, that is true. Education is the way out. Education is the number one way to escape poverty. So I am not discounting that. Education does matter. Information matters. But when we're talking about these highly charged topics like our money, information just isn't enough. And so when you build that infrastructure, it becomes the fail stop. It becomes the catcher when the information fails us, when the information isn't enough, which usually it isn't, because money is highly emotional. It's not just math. If money was just math, we'd all be millionaires because we all know basic math. Okay, my generational change makers, being good with money is a skill and you can learn it. And that's exactly what we do in Her Money Story Accelerator. It exists to build a system that runs without willpower. In 90 days, you will start to trust yourself with money. I guarantee it. Let's build your playbook. Book a consult. I will put the link in the show notes. When you have a good system, you will always know where you stand. That is a promise. Let's build the things that you need to get you there. All right. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week.